it up somehow.
Yes, my Straight Talk family, you hear that theme song, and you know it is time for another edition of Straight Talk, and time for me to bid you good night, St. Kitts and Nevis. Good night to the entire Caribbean region, and I must say good night as well to the world. Because we are on the World Wide Web, and we reach you in Asia, we reach you in Africa, we reach you in Europe, and we reach you all over North America. So I can say, and I will say good night, I will say good morning, and I will say good afternoon, because one of such greetings will be applicable to the region in which you now find yourselves. And I always like to welcome the first timers. We do have first timers each occasion because the word is going out, especially since the acts of suppression have started and continued. We ask you to spread the word so that freedom of expression and freedom generally will reign in our beloved country of St. Kitts and Nevis. And for the first timers, Straight Talk is a public service program that facilitates and promotes free expression on all issues of national interest, be they legal, be they environmental, be they technological, social, economic, and or political issues. On Straight Talk, we do provide you with a forum to express yourselves freely. Let us, however, in the process, just strive to get St. Kitts and Nevis back to the freest, if not one of the freest countries in the entire universe. On this program, we try as well to raise the level of national consciousness. We try to raise the level of national discourse by alerting our people to their rights, to their responsibilities, and certainly to their obligations. My name is Ian Patches-Liebert, and I give Almighty God thanks for blessing me with yet another opportunity to join you in conversation on yet another occasion. And tonight, we are going to discuss, with your permission, of course, with your indulgence, I should say, and our caption normally attracts attention, and sometimes, or one time got me into problems as well. And our thesis tonight is about the new roommate there's a new roommate in Garth's glass house. And I'm warning them to stop throwing stones. And you know, every time we hear the expression that warns us about living in a glass house, and when we think about living in a glass house, for some reason we always think about Peter Tosh. I would say we in the Caribbean, we who are reggae conscious, I must say, we always think about Peter Tosh. You remember this? Yes, I remember that song very well. If you live in a glass house, you don't throw stones, you know. If you can't take blows, then don't give blows. But the truth be told, though, the term, the idiom, I think is called, it is a proverb that appeared in historical literature dating as far back as the 13th or perhaps the 14th century, I believe. I believe it dates back to the 1300s, I think. I stand to be corrected. But before we go into more details, however, in relation to our dissertation tonight, I want to look at our observations in review. I haven't been able to get au fait with the obituaries, but for those who have lost loved ones, I want to convey our sincere condolences to all. And you know, I thought our departed hero was going to be interred on Friday. I understand that William Doe, in fact, was interred this morning. It actually took me by surprise and somewhat even disappointed myself. But my Stray Dog family, it's the time when we highlight the issues and do some reflection. We then ask questions such as what was accomplished, how it has helped us, how it has helped others, my Stray Dog family, and what has changed since, and what can be expected next, and what new have we learned as a people. That's the real objective of our observations and review, and to ensure that we keep people accountable as well. And as I always say, we as public servants must account for our stewardship. And a lot of that is just being ignored in recent times. We have not addressed, for example, the development of the MSR Media Limited And if you recall, some time ago, right here on Straight Talk, we informed you that the company was invited by the Premier of Nevis some 2 years ago during the period of COVID-19. And we did a search we did a search of Company House in London back then, which revealed that the public limited company had assets of some £1,200 sterling. Underline that. £1,200, £1,200 sterling. That was listed in the financial statements. But my people, this company, I must give its directorship kudos, because this company has astutely negotiated a deal with the Nevis Island administration back then and received $400,000 each month. Yes, $400,000 every month from the Nevis Treasury. And we don't fabricate things here on Straight Talk. So when they attempt to cite us for libel or defamation, the only defense to defamation is the truth. So we like to bring you the facts.
Yes, there is a financial arrangement with MSR. I believe the number is $150,000. Yes, there is a financial arrangement with MSR. I believe the number is $150,000.
Okay, but that's coming from the mouth of the Premier. That's not the soundbite I really intended to play, but at least it's confirmed. Well, it must have been a sweetheart deal nonetheless. Because my Straight Talk family, in just 2 years, MSR Media Limited bought a hotel for millions of dollars. MSR Media Limited, in 2 years, has purchased a hotel for millions of dollars. We're trying to establish the costs. We're trying to establish as well whether the St. Kitts Treasury, with the instruction of our Premier Drew, our Prime Minister Drew, beg your pardon, has been subsidizing the cost of the MSR Media Limited. And they have claimed, and I very well believe, they have created employment. I don't know if the numbers are correct, but they have created employment, we must confess. And that's a good thing. And perhaps that's why the Premier, in the first instance, invited them during the COVID period to more or less stimulate the economy. I'll speak for him now. Take my words, Premier. You can use those words. But Premier Drew, beg your pardon, Premier Drew, in the meanwhile, remains silent about any contribution from the St. Kitts Treasury. But like I said, they have done well because they have purchased the OTI hotel for how much we don't know.
MSR Media established itself in the Federation 2 years ago, and in that time we have produced 9 films in our beautiful nation. MSR has recently purchased the OTI Hotel, now called the MSR Hotel, which will be our new headquarters and creative hub in the Federation.
Well, you've heard that for yourself. Creative hub. They have purchased a new hotel. So when you look back at their financial statements listed on the Company House, they have done well in just a couple of years. Our second observation has also been is about the lack of truth, or our second observation, I should say. Let me speak clearly. Prime Minister Drew continues to be economic with the truth. And in this case, it relates to the construction of the new correctional facility. And I want the Prime Minister, I invite him to look at the 2022 estimates, volume 2, and the capital projects listed under number 0605119, and the budget funds allocated in the sums of $80 million. And obviously that project must have what is termed rolled over into the 2023 estimates for fiscal year 2023. But his response to this question I find sickening. And a friend of mine, an old colleague of mine, said to me just a few days ago, he's on his way from the Bahamas, and I felt embarrassed because he said to me, "Boy, Patches, your prime minister is boring." But this response to the question today, I found it extremely sickening. And I say so with an abundance of respect. Because I asked the question about what is called the prison project. He said this.
This is one question, but it's actually follow-ups on several issues. For example, the prison project, which you basically inherited from the previous administration. Right. The solar project at the Kim Collins Highway and the New Bastia High School, as well as the peace program. Right. Where are we with those matters?
He spoke about the prison project, correct. Now the prison project is what we inherited. That had been signed by the previous administration. Of course, we thought that it would have been better to do housing than to go to a prison, because at that particular time, or to spend so much what was being spent. Not that a prison is not important, but we are thinking more of a rehabilitation center instead of just a prison to just lock down people. But that was inherited, and we are looking at the mechanics of it and see what can be.
But Prime Minister Drew, if he did his homework and did his research and read his documents, it is not a prison to just lock down people. It is listed as a correctional facility. Even the head of the correctional facility whom I understand you sent home at the end of this month, former Superintendent James, I forgot what his title was over there at the correctional facility. I think he was commissioner of the correctional facility. I stand corrected. But it is not a prison to lock down people. If you look at the designs, if you look at all the details, you'll find a lot of focus is on rehabilitation, Prime Minister Drew. And stop misleading the country. It's not a shame to say you don't know. As old as I am, if something comes to me and I don't know, I say I don't know. And I don't do my research or ask somebody information. You can't know everything. So just say you don't know. But to say that a prison is being built to just lock down people is so false and so embarrassing and so sickening. And my third and final observation tonight, it's in relation to a quote-unquote forensic audit that I've heard so much about. Heard so many $1 million missing and so many people will be we go to jail, and this scorched earth politics and policy that has been introduced in our country is frightening. It's frightening because so many live in a glass house, but they're pelting stones. But until we see the forensic audit published, and quotes have been made about the content of this forensic audit. We don't know which firm. We understand it's a Canadian firm. I've got the name, but I have not confirmed it. And if the Prime Minister has any scruples, he would tell the country that NN whatever did this forensic audit, and we have the report, either table it in Parliament or give access to the country, to the citizens, of the content of the report. But suffice to add, though, that a forensic audit is not a trial. Why are you trying persons in the public domain? The purpose of a forensic audit is to gather the facts, marshal the facts, and put them together in the form of a report to be presented to the cabinet or to the parliament and to the country. So, Mr. Prime Minister, a trial will only occur if and when the forensic audit or some investigator believes that he or she can prove that some suspect or suspects did in fact commit a crime. And we know who have committed crimes in this country, and we know the recent crime that everyone is talking about at this time. But those are my observations in review for tonight, and except to add that we are still following the lack of response in relation to the CBI program and the passports. I note that our foreign minister, the Right Honorable Dr. Denzel Llewellyn Douglas, the real prime minister in the cabinet, as some people refer to him, I note he has is on his return from the United Arab Emirates. We know a lot of stories about the United Arab Emirates, but we'll hear more about that in subsequent programs. But as I said earlier, my Straight Dog family, every time we hear the expression about living in a glass house, I'm going now to my dissertation, I'm going now to my thesis for tonight, which is entitled, as I said, for those who may have just joined me, A New Roommate in Garth's Glass House. Warn them to stop throwing stones. And as I said earlier, every time we hear the expression that warns about living in a glass house, many of us, I am sure, think about Peter Tosh. And you all remember Peter Tosh's chartbuster, if you live in a glass house. I think I should replay that.
Man, let no man
Yes, respect the Rasta man. If you live in a glass house, don't throw stone. If you can't take blows, don't throw blows. Truth be told, though, my straight talk family, it is a proverb that appeared in historical literature, as I said before, dating back as far as the 13th or 14th century, I believe. But Peter Tosh's version of this proposition makes it abundantly clear when he said, if you can't take blows, then don't throw blows. And the Attorney General, Garth Lucien Wilkin, is a typical example of one who enjoys throwing blows or sending threats as part of what he called the rule of man.
We are at a proverbial fork in the road in our history. And to lead that charge, lead that change, lead us down the right path is the member for St. Christopher A. That is why he appointed me to be the anti-corruption minister. I am the anti-corruption minister. Let the people in this country know. Let it be known that this, the people's government, does not tolerate and will never tolerate abuses of the treasury by anyone. A new day and a better way is upon us. The people have asked for openness, fairness, accountability, and good governance from the people who sit on this side. That time is now to this country. Madam Speaker, I am proud personally to be a man of action, not one who just likes to bang his mouth. I can beat my chest and boast that I am a hard worker.
Yes, they beat their chests because they are hiring their friends and firing their enemies. There's so many people whose jobs have been terminated. I've heard about Night Watch Security, whose contract were unceremoniously terminated. And a new company, I think, is WASP. I believe it's WASP, W-A-S-P, has been installed at National Insurance or the National Bank and Insurance, as well as the JN France Hospital. I'm told the contract started and overrides with this current contract that ends in a few months, or it may have ended the 1st of March. And this company, Night Watch Security, has been in business for over 26 years. And if you're going to change, and if you're going to use the legislation, why not open the tender to everyone? Because my information and reliable information tells me that this new company is charging $8 more per man per hour. But it will all come out in the wash one day. But you continue to hire your friends and fire your enemies. So when some of our leaders are beating their chests, they overlook the fact that they live in glass houses. And people are easily tempted to throw rocks at their glass houses whenever they make any wrong moves. And don't take it literally. I am speaking in metaphoric terms. People were accused of abusing the treasury. But what about the abuse of Social Security? To be exact, the Social Security funds. Past politicians, Politicians past and present are leaders. And some leaders resist the attacks whether their glass is clean enough and whether or not the contents inside the house are too dirty or not extravagant enough, not fancy enough. But sooner, rather than later, they will all find out that not one aspect of living in a glass house escapes detection by the people. People in the public eye, especially politicians, are exposed to public judgment and criticism. And they must understand, they must welcome that. They are said to live in glass houses. People in the public eye are vulnerable, exposed to the public, and their persona is as fragile as glass. Today, when we use that expression here in St. Kitts and Nevis and elsewhere, what we are simply saying is what you are doing today will come back around to bite you. Take my word. You are hiring your friends and firing your so-called enemies. But it will come back one day, come back around to bite you. You see what happened to the Attorney General? The Attorney General, from the moment he was appointed, the power seemed to have gone to his head. Play back that tape of the swearing-in ceremony after he took his oath of office. Take a good look. When he got his instrument and was going back to his seat, he punched his fist. And we see what's happening since then. He started to metaphorically throw stones and open up himself to criticism that he just could not avoid and he just could not absorb. And he tried to suppress those criticisms by using even the courts. But he that goes to court for justice, the old saying goes something like this: he must go with clean hands. Those are my words. I think it says comes. But all of us have shortcomings, and we should not be judgmental. Every one of us. There's no one perfect on this earth. The only one or only perfect one to have walked the face of this earth is a man called Jesus Christ, Jesus Christo. And believe me, my straight dog family, every single one of us must appear before the judgment seat of Christ. And we can't call no witnesses. You can't take no lawyer, no friend. You go by yourself, you and you alone. And we all, each of us, may be recompensed for the things that we have done. For every finger you point at other people's shortcomings, 4 fingers, it is said, are pointing back towards you. If you were faultless, you could judge others, but you're not living in a glass house. You live in a structured house like the rest of us. Then don't throw stones. Don't throw stones. I ask you, my straight dog family.
I might be publicly embarrassing some people, which might actually be worse than going to prison. I'm contemplating whether I should do that, and I'm minded more so about 70-30 to embarrass some people who might not have been corrupt, but were, I don't want to use the word I used earlier, but not very friendly towards our treasury. And I'm not going to tolerate that, and I'm going to embarrass some people.
Don't throw stones, Attorney General, when you live in a glass house. And you have your roommate, a new roommate in your glass house. And this message is for both of you. Stop throwing stones. Because just yesterday, my Stray Dog family, this new roommate moved into Garth's glass house and said this to the world from Garth's glass house.
What follows here is my opinion, and my opinion only, expressed of my own free will, after careful examination and reflection. It has to do with Mr. Garth Wilkin, presently the Attorney General. Prior to becoming Attorney General, he owed Social Security money in relation to an employee of his. He was late in the payments, and he went to Social Security, sorted out the payments. That was the end of the matter. No legal action taken, no legal action necessary. Now, I said this happened before he became Attorney General, but I don't want that to be any distinguishing point in the conversation. He should have paid on time, and that's the end of it.
It was not really the end of it, because his new roommate continued with this.
He should have paid on time, and that's the end of it. But there are ways of fixing that without having to resort to court. And the Social Security does that every day indeed. And I'm not making excuses for him. I don't need to, and he doesn't need me to. I am not holding any brief for him either. How many employers you think make their payments late? Well, my guess would be in the thousands.
My Stray Dog family, the truth be told though, Garth Lucian Wilkin is not 1,000 people. He is the Attorney General of St. Kitts and Nevis. He is the Minister of Justice and Legal Affairs. He is the principal or chief legal advisor to the government, who sets the legislative agenda for the country. As a matter of fact, my Stray Dog family, he said that law is his passion and his love. That's what he said.
I enjoy being a lawyer. I want to continue being a lawyer. I am a lawyer right now. I'm working as a lawyer. So I want to keep doing that because that's my passion and my love.
My Stray Dog family, if he is a lawyer, and if he's the Attorney General, his standards must rise above all other lawyers. As a matter of fact, he's the leader of the Bar Association. And I saw the new, is it called the new court deal? That started, and they had this parade in the street, and you saw the Attorney General stepping like the Pope, leading the lawyers. I imagine all those who were called to the bar, his bar. I wonder what they're saying today. Because, you see, the actuary, I think, is Mr. Desmond Osborne, speaking on Social Security's 45th anniversary and speaking about the transformation and reformation of the fund. He had this to say, which is rather instructive.
Probably more importantly, I think, is the fact that We need to find a way to ensure that people who are supposed to pay only get a business license renewed or only get to drive taxi or get to be a doctor or a lawyer in the private sector if they're compliant with Social Security, right? Checks and balances in place. If you don't pay on the right hand, you can't practice on the left hand, right? It happens in the US, it happens in Canada, it happens all over the international, all over the big countries. We need to find a way in the Caribbean to let the system speak to one another, and let's make sure that everybody's compliant to make the system better.
I want to replay that soundbite from Mr. Desmond Osborne, the actuary for the Social Security Board. I'll play that one more time for you, my Straight Talk family. It matters not whether thousands, 10,000s, 2,000, 10 people, or how many people owe. Two wrongs can never make a right. It's as simple as that.
Probably more importantly, I think, is the fact that we need to find a way to ensure that people who are supposed to pay only get a business license renewed or only get to drive taxi or get to be a doctor or a lawyer in the private sector if they're compliant with Social Security, right? Checks and balances in place. If you don't pay on the right hand, you can't practice on the left hand, right? It happens in the US, it happens in Canada, it happens all over the international, all over the big countries. We need to find a way in the Caribbean to let the system speak to one another, and let's make sure that everybody's compliant to make the system better.
And that's clear. If the Attorney General or whomever was not compliant, he should not be allowed to practice. Not just the taxi drivers, the lawyers, the doctors, all who are non-compliant should not be allowed to practice. But the role of Garth Wilkins' roommate in the La Valley Development Project, and whether it went beyond him just signing a contract for over $50 million, is still to be clarified. He has a new roommate now, but they both are in the glass house. And although his roommate just yesterday announced that investigations should go far back, I wonder how far back he meant when he said this.
Wherever the truth leads, however far back into the past it may reach, then so be it. You, the people, need to know.
And I agree. Wherever the truth leads, no matter how far back, the people need to know. And one wonders, however, if Garth's roommate will continue to plead the fifth, since he did so years ago. The new roommate living in this glass house with Garth Lucien Wilkin was once the minister with responsibility for the Frigate Bay Development Corporation. His roommate signed this $50 million contract, and when confronted about the whereabouts of the golf course, where the La Valley Greens, when he was confronted, his roommate said this.
Apparently, he wants me to explain to the nation why I, as a minister, signed an agreement. Well, it seems as though he wants me to explain why I signed. I'm told that he said he's not accusing anybody of bubble, but that he was just asking, where's the money? That's what I'm told, right? And I don't remember. But let me say what I have to say. I'm not saying it didn't happen.
He can't say it didn't happen. because I still have a copy of the contract. So we want to know how far back we must go. And I wonder, when he was saying going far back, he was trying to throw a stone at the former Prime Minister of the Labour Party. But should the country take that for an answer? I don't remember. That's a question we need to ask ourselves. Because the long green fence have disappeared. There is no golf course. So should we take Garth Lucian Wilkins' new roommate, I don't remember, for an answer? Or should we start an investigation about about LaValle and the misuse of the powers of his office? Or rather, could we conclude that he was lying when he said he don't remember, as an attempt to cover up a scandal and or corrupt practices? So until Garth Lucian Wilkins' new roommate breaks his silence on that $50 million contract that he signed, the country will conclude that he has no moral compass to guide us in areas of good governance and integrity in public life. Garth Wilkins' new roommate, like the old proverb says, he lives in a glass house, so he can't throw stones. And that is my point tonight, which is about the hypocrisy of Garth Wilkins and his new roommate, who are living in glass houses, but yet throwing stones. And he tried to suppress the information coming out. You recall that injunction he served on me? It was so burdensome. That restraining order smacked at the very core of our fundamental rights and freedoms. I couldn't even say what the injunction said. Imagine that. And our fundamental rights and freedoms are protected within our Constitution. And always read Section 12 of our Constitution, which speaks to the protection of freedom of expression. We must not allow anybody to stifle us. I want to say to you, though, when you speak, speak the truth. Because the Constitution says, except with his own consent, a person shall not be hindered in the enjoyment of his freedom of expression, including freedom to hold opinions without interference, freedom to receive ideas and information without interference, freedom to communicate ideas and information without interference, whether the communication is to the public generally or to any person or class of persons, and freedom from interference with his correspondence. I said before, and I'll repeat tonight, I will say without fear of contradiction and without malice that our Attorney General, Garth Lucian Wilkins, broke the law, and that is a serious matter. The Attorney General, Garth Lucian Wilkins, held a Bible in his hand. That's the thing. He held a Bible in his hand, and he swore before God and the entire Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis and the world to uphold the Constitution and the law. Yet he failed all of us. He failed all of us.
I, Garth Lucien Wilkin, do swear that I will honor, uphold, and preserve the Constitution of St. Christopher and Nevis, and the law. So help me God.
And after being exposed, he moved to the court to stifle my fundamental right to freedom of expression, even though he has promoted openness. He has, would you believe?
When we teach people what are the rights under this legislation, when we operationalize it, people will have the confidence that even if it's me, they can speak out against me. And they don't have to fear losing their job. This is the only way we move forward as a nation.
Talk is cheap, they say, but whiskey costs money. They don't want you to speak. But according and on the basis of the actions of the Attorney General, we have concluded that he does not abide by the judicial requirements, neither does he abide by the ethics and standards required of a lawyer. And what message does he send to the 10 or 15 young lawyers in St. Kitts and Nevis who were just called to the bar, or rather whom the AG called to the bar? Because the Attorney General is the leader of the bar. How can he lead the bar when a high court judge cites such horrible conduct? The minimum is plain dishonesty, grounds for dismissal. That's why we still ask for his resignation. And what is disappointing, though, is the Prime Minister's support for the Attorney General. His palace guards, in his cooked-up special interview today, never asked him, as Minister of Social Security, what about this most talked about topic in the country and throughout the Caribbean. And I can tell you, we won't stop. We won't stop. I'm almost at the point of saying, I'm going on record, that I believe, or I do not believe that the former Prime Minister, Denzel Douglas, even Denzel Douglas, would have sanctioned this sort of criminal behavior of his chief or principal legal advisor, who leads the government's legislative agenda, who just a few days ago tabled the Integrity in Public Life, the IPL, and the anti-corruption legislation. To many in St. Kitts and Nevis, that was seen as a mockery of our parliamentary system. Whether he should continue as the Federation's chief or principal legal advisor is not a difficult question to answer, because at paragraph 37 of the decision handed down by High Court Judge Her Ladyship Tamara Gill on February 16, 2023, she opined that A.G. Wilkins' actions constitute a criminal offense, whether or not the law is strictly enforced. So he wants his new roommate to read the decision and stop talking nonsense. Well, I'm not a lawyer, but once he paid his nanny, it can be deemed that he has made the deduction on behalf of the Social Security or deduction for the social security contribution. And that money can be said is held in trust. And according to the social security legislation, a contribution statement must be filed monthly, and payment of the monthly contribution must be paid before the end of the ensuing month, or else the employer commits a criminal offense. So I want to tell his new roommate, it is not just he paid and case closed. No. For 26 months, or over a period of 26 months, and even when he was the president of the Bar Association, he never paid. He paid the day before he was sworn in as the Minister of Justice and Legal Affairs. But my straight dog family, that act, Social Security Act, is very clear. But, as I said, he who comes to equity must come with clean hands. Those who live in glass houses should not throw stones. There's a roommate in Garth Wilkins' glass house, but both of them, they must stop throwing stones. That's my story tonight, my straight dog family, and I'm not going to change it. I will entertain your calls now and your emails. I always like to implore you, though, when I open the lines, which I'll do in a few seconds. I anticipate that you will respect others. And of course, to achieve that, you must first respect yourselves. Let us try to be fair to all concerned. Let us try to build goodwill and better friendships. Let us ensure that the things we say and or do will be beneficial to all concerned. And in saying and doing those things, let us strive to build a kinder, gentler St. Kitts and Nevis. That said, my straight dog family, thank you for holding you live.
Good night to you, brother. Honorable, respectful in the house of African people.
How are you, my brother? Ras Ayer in the house.
I give him thanks. I just thankful for the powers of the divine creator to be able to give all of our people life within their enjoy. In where we see we can able to pay homage and respect to our elders in where we see fitting at this point in time, and those who are able to sacrifice us at this time. Now, I have nothing close to your program setting because I'm on the Naya Bingi gathering right at this moment, but I would like to really emphasize something, so that's why you're calling on your program right at this time. So if you have something real strong in detail, you can tell me so I can know what my wrongs I can cover in your detail of your program.
Well, our caption tonight, our thesis tonight is entitled "A New Roommate in Garth's Glass House. Stop Throwing Stones." And you must have heard that I mentioned earlier, and I know you're a reggae conscious man, what's his name? Peter Tosh, that is Chartbuster, and you know it well.
Okay, you're not going to move to the next question. Great in that tone. All we could say, if you live in a glass house, you must not your stone.
True.
If you can't take blows, not turn a blows.
Yes, Rastaman.
So we know for you to echo the whole sentiment of our great pioneers in the reggae music industry that are able to enhance this revolution stand. So from the context of your pursuit within the matter that at hand, we like to say, in our laws that we're seeing on here, that was formulated by those people where we call laws up in England, we realize there is things that still instrumental in our society today. Well, I said that because of what a thing happened today at a funeral this morning. And it was very mystical to see that. And I said, what a thing. It's very heartening to realize these things, they're still opening in ways and people don't understand the aspect behind it. I would like to say, things are Nevis, and the system that things are Nevis is formulated by people who are part of the structure of the Freemason development. Now they are able to convey themselves in our system, in and out of it. And it's time now we people understand where we shall stand as who we are and where we're going. Because we cannot follow this system too long to consider ourselves as a justice system. We have an unjust system from inside out. And it won't change until that whole cookiness, and we call that double standard on here, change. We don't tell them politicians to change it. It's all own people need to change it because we uphold them like they're more better than anything. No man, whether he is a prime minister or prime minister or wherever you consider yourself in this leadership role, once you not have respect for our people, you know, deserve my respect. Why you love you as a human being. So we're saying here basically that it's time now. We never hope people be respected by all spectrum, whether you're rich or you're poor. We don't want no kind of prestige thing going on here, and people still being facing suffering and injustice in our country we call an independent country or independent federation. Because that is the way we're going forward. We're going to have a problem with our generation coming along. Because they ain't going to stand for these nonsense because we've seen happening at this time. We are calling for a betterment. We're calling for a betterment of our people to have equal rights and justice meaning of across the board, and meaning that we have to see it come from the heart, not by just talking it, live it. Action speak louder than the words. I already elders speak about that. So this time now we see the action coming out. Let us stop the hypocrisy around here. We thank Brother Patches. I hope that you have a positive format with your program and you are able to engage educational to our people and the world apart, because this racist system that thinks that needs holding up from our criminal England and the Americans that we are seeing impacting on us now. It's time now we wake up. Give them.
Thank you very much, my dear brother. I am never afraid to talk the truth and speak truth to power. And it's one thing I always admire a young brother for. When Team Unity held the day of prayer, I promised to read this on my last program. This email actually came in just before I signed off on Thursday, on Monday, beg your pardon. So I promised to read it, and I always keep my promises. It says, when Team Unity held its day of prayer every year, and a lot of these labor pastors never supported as if God was political. Tomorrow is Masquerade Day for the church. Jeffrey calls it a day of prayer. He goes around parading his lifestyle in these sideway churches. Many of these same pastors used to say that church is a department of government. Now they're running behind Drew, who is not even of the Christian faith, to say, let's pray. Hypocritical and parasites, the bunch of them are. Look how they used to talk about government should have not had an ecclesiastic ministry, but now they are supporting it. Look at them. This is spiritual wickedness in high places. The same Bible says in Matthew 6, verses 5 to 8, and when you pray, you must not be like hypocrites, for they love to stand and pray in the synagogues and at the street corners, that they may be seen by others. Truly, I say to you, they have received their reward. But when you pray, go into your room and shut the door and pray to your Father who is in secret. And your Father who sees in secret will reward you. And when you pray, do not heap up empty phrases as the Gentiles do, for they think that they will be heard for their many words. Do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask Him. That's what the Bible says, not me. When Matthew Hepburn and the rest of them will stop fooling people, God will not listen to these jokers who suck and labor breasts. God don't listen to anyone offending Him by their lifestyle. That's why I prefer to stay in my house than go to church to give them my hard-earned money. Look at what Isaiah 1 verse 15 says to. When you spread your hands, I will hide mine eyes from you. Yes, even though you make many prayers, I will not listen. Your hands are full of blood. Please tell Jeffrey when you go to Rivers, he should read Leviticus 18 verse 22 and Leviticus 20 verse 13. All we're doing is bringing God's wrath on us. I read something earlier, and I normally like to read these things before I do, but my good brother Hepburn, is not one who I know fools people, so I really wouldn't want to associate myself with that, but it's what the writer has said. Good morning, Miss Ambassador. How can we get that judgment? Okay, we'll sort it out for you. Yes, my dear brother, I'll sort it out to you, I promise. Yes, we need to get that judgment. I should post it perhaps on Facebook as well. Wondering, Mr. Liebert, if you can carve out some time in the coming days to talk about the situation with the Attorney General. I'd like to write an in-depth news feature. Please let me know. Thanks. Okay, I will. I didn't see that until that's yesterday. Yes, I'll reach out to you on that. Every time I look at those 4 tourist boats docked at the pier, coupled with the taxis slowly passing by, filled with tourists, it pleased me so much that I could only shout in my heart, "Great job, Patches." If Patches was a coward, he would have succumbed to the caustic criticisms leveled against him and abandoned the project. God bless you, Patches. Let them take the praises for work they did not do. My Straight Talk family, it's 12 past the 9 o'clock hour. Our numbers, if you are so minded to participate in the program, it's 663-6672 and 646-829-6672. Our email address, do have quite a lot of emails. I'll try to get all of them, dispense of all of them before the end of the program. So bear with me, emailers. I know many have missed the program on Win FM and traditional radio, but we will sort that out sooner rather than later, my Straight Talk family. But good night, Mr. Liebert reads this other email. You are to be commended for your noble fight to maintain the freedoms our forefathers bequeathed to us. Today is not 1950, when we are told what to do, what to think, and what to say. And it certainly is not that long ago time in the past when we can be told what not to say. Free education is not free. It comes at a price, and the price we must use it to make sure we are never forced. We are never forced back to those days, dark days of a bygone era, when edicts were issued from the privileged few on plantations or from the law firms in Basseterre. As a lifelong supporter of the Labour Party, I have lost tremendous respect, for A.G. Garth Wilkin. At his very first challenge, he chose to not do the right thing. What a shame. He chose to protect his politically appointed public office position rather than issue an apology admitting his wrong or wrongs. He is no example for the young people of the Federation, nor for the young lawyers now entering the legal profession and the bar. We go back to the lines. Caller, I want to thank you for holding your live.
Good night. You can hear me?
Yes, my dear. Good night. You're yes. Loud and clear.
Okay, you went away. You did not bring my smartphone because you know I can't hear you. Okay, it's unfair. Retirees, pensioners, social security people getting 25,000 per month, and young people who have 10 and 11 subjects, only pep change they get in. And if the hospital don't fix, rain going to rot in the machine. Timothy, you is the best, too strong, can't do it like you. What the ministers just get, that's why they cheat their way in. Good night, have a good safe ride home.
Thank you very much, Sounds. Alice in Wonderland.
That's you. That's you.
I haven't heard my Alice in Wonderland for a long time, and I know that a lot of our people don't have the smartphones, so many have been deprived of listening to your programs, not my programs, your program, Straight Talk, which has been on the air for a long time. And we are going to remain here. We've been through thick and thin, and we're not going to surrender. I tell you, we are not going to surrender. When we die, we will die with our guns in our hands. And don't take that literally. Don't take that literally. I am in a metaphoric mood tonight, my Straight Dog family. Dr. Drew, please to fix that bad road in Lower Monkey Hill, reads this email. Leading from Talbot's house, transcending up the hill, and coming back right down to that little hill facing Brian's house. Then have the road turn into a one-way street. You see, Mr. Drew, the traffic on that street does be so tight when the vehicles are coming down and simultaneously going up. The other night, the ambulance was in the area, parked virtually in the center of the road, attending to a patient, and traffic was held up for a very, very long time. Fix the road, doctor, reads this email. This other email reads, good evening, Mr. Patches. Blessings to you and the whole Straight Talk family. Tonight, my question for you, in hopes that we find an answer. Are there any defibrillators in the hospital? Recently, I've lost a loved one at the JNF hospital while watching them trying to resuscitate, my loved ones. I simply ask, where are the defibrillators? Is that the right one? We are seemingly lucky enough to have a medical doctor, not only as our Prime Minister, but he is also the Minister in charge of health. Please help shed some light into this issue if you can. Patches reads that email. I don't know if you can lift our hopes too high, because the last time we had a medical doctor as the Minister of Health, I think that's when the hospital, the state of the hospital went to its worst ever. I remember when Asim Martin was, in fact, the Minister of Health, the hospital just ran down. Although he promised so many things when he was in opposition. So I'm just a little cautious of keeping our hopes too high because we have a medical doctor who is the Minister of Health. It's all about administration, though, my straight dog family. It has nothing to do with medical training. The hospital needs management, good management. And we hear a lot of things being said in recent times, but I hasten to say that we have to be careful. Be careful. Yes, it's defibrillators. That's okay. It's spelled wrong, but I understand. Yes, defibrillators are devices that send an electric pulse or shock to the heart to restore a normal heartbeat. This is what it says. Very interesting. As we live, we learn, my straight dog family. But my straight dog family is 19 past the 9 o'clock hour. And we are discussing tonight the issues as it relates to leadership. And what has happened in our country in recent times? We have seen hiring and firing, simultaneous actions. You have seen the firing of the quote-unquote so-called enemies and the hiring of friends. There's some people who are hired. I've heard of names. I'm trying to even establish the facts that these people are hired, but we don't hear about them. They're secretly hired in the Prime Minister's ministry. But my straight dog family, in time, will hear all about that. But as I said earlier, and in the context of our discussion tonight, we have heard, or each time we hear the expression that warns us about living in a glass house and admonishes us not to throw stones, we think about Peter Tosh, and we all remember this song. Oh yes, my straight dog family. So whenever we hear any talk about glass house, we reflect on Peter Tosh. But as I said before, but I'll come back. Let's take this call. I'll come back to that. My straight dog family, caller, you're live.
As I said before, but I'll
hello, caller.
Come back. Let's take this call. I'll come back to that. My straight dog family,
caller, could you turn your radio down?
Hello, caller. Come back. Let's take this call. I'll come back to that.
Okay, I guess that caller doesn't want to hear us. Yeah, truth be told, it's a proverb. It's a proverb that appeared in historical literature, dating as far back as the 13th or 14th century. But the Peter Tosh version, as I said, makes it very clear. Makes it very clear.
This
caller.
Very clear.
Hello, caller. Caller, could you turn your radio down? Hello, caller.
Caller, can you turn your radio down?
Okay, I don't think I'll take the call. Patches, good evening. Reads this email. I am back once again. Now, Patches, there's still no show of the Honorable Congress Maynard at the ICT department, even though he promised to show up 3 weeks ago. If Congress thinks he is doing the staff any good by leaving them at the wrath of his auntie, he's fooling himself. It seems as though he loves the way his aunt is mistreating the staff there because he has not gone to address the situation. Patches, let Congress know that the staff is only asking him to come to save the Labour government of the embarrassment that they are planning on them. How can you still have your auntie as your permanent secretary, who is incompetent, vindictive, malicious, and spiteful? That's just the way she had Akila, preventing her from meeting with the staff. And look at what they did to Akila last year, August the 5th. So let Congress continue, and he will be taught that exact lesson. His aunt respects no one. She does not respect her director. She do not want her director to function as she should, not even the coordinators. Patches, that department has gone to solid waste, just waiting to be discarded off on the cannery dump. Such a shame, so distasteful. My advice to Drew is wake up. Done away with the sleeping and do something now. What a shame, Patches, what a shame. Poor ICT department has gone and his aunt needs to go. And she needs to go now, reads this email. It's now 26 minutes past the 9 o'clock hour. If you're just joining me, my Straight Dog family, tonight we've looked at, so far, our caption, our title, our thesis. A new roommate in Garth's glass house. Stop throwing stones. And as I've said before, my Straight Dog family, what we said is that the Peter Tosh version makes it abundantly clear when he said, if you take blows, then if you cannot take blows, rather, do not throw blows. And the Attorney General, Garth Lucian Wilkin, is a typical example of one who enjoys throwing blows or sending threats as part of his rule of man theory. That was his theory when he came forward as a minister of government and our chief legal advisor. Remember this.
We are at a proverbial fork in the road in our history. And to lead that charge, lead that change, lead us down the right path is the member for St. Christopher A. That is why he appointed me to be the anti-corruption minister. I am the anti-corruption minister. Let the people in this country know. Let it be known that this, the people's government, does not tolerate and will never tolerate abuses of the treasury by anyone. A new day and a better way is upon us. The people have asked for openness, fairness, accountability, and good governance from the people who sit on this side. That time is now to this country. Madam Speaker, I am proud personally to be a man of action, not one who just likes to bang his mouth. I can beat my chest and boast that I am a hard worker.
My Straight Dog family, when some of our leaders were beating their chests They overlook the fact that they live in glass houses and people are easily tempted to throw rocks at these glass houses whenever they make any wrong moves. People were accused of abusing the treasury. Well, what about the abuse of Social Security? Politicians past and present are leaders, and some leaders resist the attacks, whether their glass is clean enough and whether or not the contents inside the house are too dirty or not extravagant enough. But sooner, rather than later, they all will find out that none, not one, aspect of living in a glass house escapes detection by the people. People in the public eye, especially politicians, they are exposed to public judgment and criticism, and they must take it in stride. They are said to live in glass houses. They are vulnerable, exposed to the public, and their persona is as fragile as glass. So today, when we use that expression here in St. Kitts and Nevis and elsewhere, what we are simply saying is what you are doing will come back around to bite you. Let me repeat that. What you're saying will come back around to bite you. At 9:30, the bottom of the hour. Let's go to the lines. Caller, you're live.
Hello, good night, Ambassador Pattis. How are you?
I am peaceful, my brother. Yourself?
I'm peaceful as well. I'm giving God thanks. I want to congratulate you. I heard you yesterday on Radio Jamaica.
Thank you. Yes.
And although despite the time was very short, you were quite concise and to the point. And if I have any advice to this sitting AG and to the administration, it would be that this matter has become an international matter. And I don't know, I can tell you that it is not looking good within the wider CARICOM community. It is not looking good. And my best advice to the honorable gentleman would to do the right thing and the honorable thing. And that honorable thing is to check his conscience and to see if he ought to have continued as a minister, particularly presiding over the portfolio of justice and legal affairs, which deals with ethics and morality. Pretty much I want to just tell you, keep up the hard work. I mean, there's nothing I have to say in terms of what is happening in the country. The voices are loud, people are crying, and it is obvious that the current leader and the Prime Minister of this country now does not understand what needs to be done. I have been a little bit quiet because I'm observing, and it is clear to me that the new film is a driver without a license, and I'm saying that to be quite nice, because there are other expressions I could use, but the reality of it is obvious that he doesn't understand what he's doing, and it is obvious that when they campaigned and the promises they made, they did not know how to even one iota of ideas how to even fulfill one of them. And when we saw today in a publication, or yesterday actually, listing achievements of the Ministry of Health, and when you looked at the previous the achievements of the former administration, they were line for line the same achievements. So one who takes credit for work which they have not done is somebody who is very dangerous, and somebody who in classes or in education you call it intellectual dishonesty, to use a better term. So nevertheless, Ambassador,
yes,
I wish you all the best and continue the hard work.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your commendation. Thank you for your contribution. Very sober contribution, I must admit. Thank you. Thank you. And yes, my Stray Dog family, it's gone regional, or rather it's gone international. And there's some things I will have to tell you on Monday, because we're not going to sit back on our laurels, and allow this to just go a particular way. Caller, you live. Hello, caller. Okay. There's no point this particular number calls back, because it won't be answered. But yesterday, my Stray Dog family, as I said, a new roommate moved into Garth Wilkins' glass house. And his new roommate had this to say, my Stray Dog family.
What follows here is my opinion, and my opinion only, expressed of my own free will, after careful examination and reflection. It has to do with Mr. Garth Wilkins, presently the Attorney General. Prior to becoming Attorney General, he owed Social Security money in relation to an employee of his. He was late in the payments, and he went to Social Security, sorted out the payments. That was the end of the matter. No legal action taken, no legal action necessary. Now, I said this happened before he became Attorney General, but I don't want that to be any distinguishing point in the conversation. He should have paid on time, and that's the end of it.
You know, my Stray Dog family, I found myself in a state of ambivalence when I heard this commentary, because I firstly figured that commentary like this shouldn't get credence on Straight Talk. Shouldn't get credence at all. But when one examines closely what has happened, or what was the actions of the Attorney General, the Attorney General transgressed the Social Security laws even before he became Attorney General and after he became Attorney General. And this is the information he provided. He provided that information as part of his affidavit. He provided his C3 forms, all the schedules from November 2020 to January 2023. And from November 2020, Garth Lucien Wilkins did not pay November, did not pay December, did not pay January, he did not pay February, he did not pay March until April 2021. And between April 2021 and August 2022, 15 long months, he did not even file his contributions. But for 15 long months, he did not pay until August the 12th. August the 12th, 2022. One day before he took the oath of office at Warner Park and was sworn in as Attorney General. Caller, you live.
One day before he took the oath of office at Warner Park and was sworn in as Attorney General. Caller, you live. One day
one day before he took the oath of office, he paid 15 months in arrears. And during that time, during the 15 months from April 2021 to August 2022, Garth Lucien Wilkin was the president of the St. Kitts Nevis Bar Association. But we'll hear much more about that come Monday, my Straight Dog family. We will hear about that. But when he became Attorney General on August the 13th, 2022, and was appointed Minister of Justice and Legal Affairs, he went and he broke the law again. He broke the law and never paid September, October, November, and December until January 2023. Never did. But what the actuary said a few days ago is very instructive. It's very instructive, my Straight Dog family. And thanks for this email informing me that the actuary, or the name of the actuary, is in fact Derek Osborne. I perhaps did not mention the name or mention the wrong name. If I did, it is Derek Osborne. Thanks for that information. And Derek Osborne, the actuary, said this at the stakeholders meeting that was convened by the Social Security Board sometime last week. I think it was last week, Monday, at the Marriott Hotel, and he made this very interesting pronouncement. The actuary, Derek Osborne, had this to say, my Straight Dog family.
Probably more importantly, I think, is the fact that we need to find a way to ensure that people who are supposed to pay only get a business license renewed, or only get to drive taxi, or get to be a doctor or a lawyer in the private sector if they're compliant with Social Security, right? Checks and balances in place. If you don't pay on the right hand, you can't practice on the left hand, right? It happens in the US, it happens in Canada, it happens all over the international, all over the big countries. We need to find a way in the Caribbean to let the system speak to one another, and let's make sure that everybody's compliant to make the system better. Probably more importantly, I think, is the fact that we need to find a way to ensure that people who are supposed to pay only get a business license renewed, or only get to drive taxi, or get to be a doctor or a lawyer in the private sector if they're compliant with Social Security, right? Checks and balances in place. If you don't pay on the right hand, you can't practice on the left hand, right? It happens in the US, it happens in Canada, it happens all over the international, all over the big countries. We need to find a way in the Caribbean to let the system speak to one another, and let's make sure that everybody's compliant to make the system better.
Yes, my Straight Dog family. We have to ensure that everybody is compliant to make the system better. So when his roommate comes and talks nonsense like this, we must call it out for what it is. Nonsense. Call it out for what it is, and do not be afraid to call it out for what it is. Nonsense.
What follows here is my opinion, and my opinion only, expressed of my own free will, after careful examination and reflection. It has to do with Mr. Garth Wilkin, presently the Attorney General. Prior to becoming Attorney General, he owed Social Security money in relation to an employee of his. He was late in the payments, and he went to Social Security, sorted out the payments. That was the end of the matter. No legal action taken, no legal action necessary. Now, I said this happened before he became Attorney General, but I don't want that to be any distinguishing point in the conversation. He should have paid on time, and that's the end of it.
And yes, it happened before he became Attorney General. And it happened even after he was sworn in as Attorney General. So what must we do? Must there be a law for people like him and a law for those others, the 54 persons who are now before the court? There's one gentleman who the Social Security has before the court to prosecute criminally, of criminal prosecution. So why him? Why the 54 others, my Shredog family? Patches, why when the poor man or woman have an issue, it's not the end of the story. But when the rich and well-to-do have issues, it is the end of the story. Just asking. And that's a pertinent question. Very pertinent question. Because for someone to say, that's the end of the story. No, there are the laws. And this is what the court said. This is what the court said. This is what the High Court judge said about the transgression of the law. And the court was very clear, pellucid, my Straight Dog family. Whether he should continue as the Federation's chief or principal legal officer or advisor is not a difficult question to answer. Cannot be. Because at paragraph 37 of the decision handed down by the High Court judge, Her Ladyship Tamara Gill, on February 16th, 2023, she opined that the Attorney General Garth Lucian Wilkins' actions constitute a criminal offense, whether or not the law is strictly enforced. Well, I'm not a lawyer, but once the AG paid his nanny, it can be deemed that he has made the deduction for the Social Security contribution. And that money is now held in trust. And according to the Social Security legislation, a contribution statement must be filed monthly. Even if he didn't pay, he must file his contribution statement. And payment of that monthly contribution must be paid before the end of the ensuing month, or else the employer commits a criminal offense. And a criminal offense can only be a type of wrongdoing that may be punished by a fine or by incarceration. What it is telling us, that Garth Lucian Wilkins could have gone to jail. Or as the Social Security Act puts it, he could have been imprisoned. And this is what the Social Security Act states at section 45, subsection 1, and I quote, "Any insured person or employer who fails to pay at or within the time prescribed for the purpose of any contribution, he or she is liable under this act to pay. Shall, for each such failure, an underline shall." There's no discretionary authority here. The act says he shall, for each such failure, be liable on summary conviction to a fine not exceeding $200 or to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 6 months or both. And the standards set for the Attorney General cannot be the same. Yet he went to the court under the guise of seeking equity, when in fact his real objective was to stifle freedom of expression in our land, in our country, in our federation. He tried to suppress my right to speak and the people's right to know. His conduct, my straight dog family, only served to remind us of the well-known doctrine. He who comes to equity must come with clean hands. Those who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. My straight dog family. Good evening. Reads this email. People are paying it attention, but not enough. Timothy was in there and removed that. This new Labour government under Jew gone in, and we now have our grocery lists: exempt 1, exempt 2, and exempt 3. But they are indeed 17% VAT. Why so many percentages on VAT with half the country working for minimum wage? Patches, I'm now wondering if I soon have to pay on how often I walk per week. The same people would go against, same people voted, beg your pardon, against Tim, and some never went to vote. But who feeling it now? Who are really feeling it? The same ones who voted for Labour. All those overseas voters should also be blamed for what the Labour government is doing to our country. Something about the name of Labour just as sensing to me. Labour are making any sense. Labour ain't making any sense, beg your pardon, and the PM Drew still don't have a clue. Reads that email. My straight dog family, this other email reads, Patches, can you explain to me what government do we have? Why is there retired old Labour ex-ministers and supporters being given, beg your pardon, big positions? Also, did Glenroy Blanchett help Jeffrey this election? Why is he, Dr. Drew's Pierce? Isn't his big bad world Hazel isn't qualified enough? Reads this other email. My straight dog family, it's 8 before the 10 o'clock hour as we wind down tonight's programming. And as we wind down tonight's programming, I remind you of some of the observations that we made tonight. And there's one such observation we made tonight which relates to a quote-unquote forensic audit. And my straight dog family, I want to state again before departing tonight that a forensic audit is not a trial. And our Prime Minister went to the Parliament under the cloak of legislative immunity, I think it's called. He had legislative cover, I must say. Cannot be sued, cannot be cited for defamation. So he had this cover in Parliament. And he spoke to some forensic audit, never said who were the auditors, never said if he has a report, never said if he will release that report to the public. But he spoke about this audit. And I conclude that the forensic audit is not a trial. The purpose of a forensic audit is generally to gather the facts, to marshal the facts and put them together in the form of a report. And if you have a report that says that so much cash or this amount of cash is unaccounted for or not accounted for, then they don't know. If the audit cannot account for cash, then who do you blame? But my Sritak family, if a report or facts and information are gathered and put together in the form of a report, then it must be presented to the cabinet and to the parliament and by extension to the people. A trial should not occur on the radio or in parliament. A trial should and will only occur if and when the forensic auditor or the investigator believes that he or she can prove. Because if it cannot be accounted for, then you cannot prove. So until the forensic auditor or the investigator can prove that the suspect or suspects did in fact commit a crime, then no trial can occur. And that's my view. In our observations as well tonight, the Prime Minister spoke about the prison and the prison being built to lock up people. That is so false and so far from the truth. Because if you look at the estimates, and they are in the estimates he himself presented in last year's budget session, it speaks to the construction of a new correctional facility. And if he asks the commissioner, he will know that the correctional facility is what it is. It is a rehabilitation center. So when he said this, it's so false and it's so sickening.
This is one question, but it's actually follow-ups on several issues. For example, the prison project, which you basically inherited from the previous administration. Right. The solar project at the Kim Collins Highway and the New Bastia High School, as well as the peace program. Right. Where are we with those matters?
He spoke about the prison project, correct. Now, the prison project is what we inherited. That had been signed by the previous administration. Of course, we thought that it would have been better to do housing than to go to a prison, because at that particular time, or to spend so much what was being spent. Not that a prison is not important, but we are thinking more of a rehabilitation center instead of just a prison to just lock down people. But that was inherited, and we are looking at the mechanics of it and see what can be.
It's not prison to just lock up people that you inherited. You inherited a correctional facility. That's top of the line. Prime Minister Drew. This email reads as we wind down tonight's programming. Good evening, sir. Listening from Chicago as usual. My questions are why the team Unity Government didn't hold him accountable when they were in office. Who him? That was going on during Harris's time in office. In the same person today held the position during Team Unity Government during his transgressions. Not certain who we are actually referring to, but it would be good to provide some clarity. Emailer. And this is my final email I'll read tonight as I wind down and wrap. Good night, Mr. Patches. Good night, my dear. Good show tonight. Thank you. Continue presenting the facts and let the people decide if they want to be governed by a prime minister who doesn't know what truth is. Abraham Lincoln quoted, "You can fool some of the people all of the time and all of the people some of the times, but you cannot fool all of the people all the time." Dr. Drew will not leave a good legacy when he's gone. He's a highly accomplished liar and will soon self-destruct. It's amazing his followers don't have the courage to call him out. They chose instead to cheer him on. The blind leading the blind. Garth Lucian Wilkin is a barrister and knows the law. However, he is too self-righteous to obey the rules of the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis and expected to stand tall. He has been caught in his own web of deceit. Where does he run to now? Continue doing your best job. The Labour government didn't give it to you and cannot take it away. Remember not to entertain fools. Have them by the wayside with blinders and bits in their mouth. Looking forward to your next show. It is well with you, Mr. Patches. Thank you very much. And that's our final email for tonight as we wrap up for tonight. And for the benefit of those who would have joined me late, the thesis tonight, a new roommate in Garth's class or glass house. Stop throwing stones. My Straight Dog family, the truth be told though, that's a proverb that appeared in historical literature dating back as far as the 13th or 14th century. I think it's the 14th century. But Peter Tosh, his version makes it abundantly clear that when he said, if you take blows, then don't. If you can't take blows, then don't throw blows. The Attorney General, Garth Lucian Wilkin, is a typical example of one who enjoys throwing blows or sending threats as part of his rule of man, he called it. When some of our leaders, beg your pardon, was beating their chests, they overlooked the fact that they live in glass houses and people are easily tempted to throw rocks at these glass houses whenever they make any wrong moves. People were accused of abusing the treasury. But what about the abuse of social security? My Street Dog family, people in the public eye, especially politicians, are exposed to public judgment and criticism. They are said to live in glass houses. They are vulnerable, exposed to the public, and their persona as fragile as glass. Today, when we use the expression here in St. Kitts and Nevis and elsewhere, what we are simply saying is what you are doing will come back around to bite you. And that is what happened to the Attorney General, Garth Lucian Wilkin, who seemed to have got power drunk from the time he took his oath of office. And all of us have shortcomings, and we should not be judgmental. For every finger you point at others or other people's shortcomings, 4 or 5 fingers are pointing back towards you. If you were faultless, you could judge others, but you're not living in a glass house. There's no man on this earth that's infallible. The Attorney General got power in his hands, and the first thing he wanted to do was to embarrass people. Publicly embarrass his own people.
I might be publicly embarrassing some people, which might actually be worse than going to prison. I'm contemplating whether I should do that, and I'm minded more so about 70-30 to embarrass some people who might not have been corrupt, but were, I don't want to use the word I used earlier, but not very friendly towards our treasury, and I'm not going to tolerate that, and I'm going to embarrass some people.
And his new roommate had the gall to say this.
He should have paid on time, and that's the end of it. But there are ways of fixing that without having to resort to court. And the Social Security does that every day indeed. And I'm not making excuses for him. I don't need to, and he doesn't need me to. I am not holding any brief for him either. How many employers you think make their payments late? Well, my guess would be in the thousands.
If 2, 3, or 1,000 employers make them late, 1,000 wrongs, or should I say 2 wrongs, much less 1,000 wrongs, cannot be right. That's the principle. He is our chief legal advisor to the government, who sets the legislative agenda for the country. He's a lawyer, and he must know the law. And ignorance of the law is no excuse. But the role of Garth's roommate in the Valley Development Project, and whether it went beyond him just signing a contract for over $50 million, is still to be clarified. Perhaps that's why he's talking this way. But my Stray Dog family, he also said that investigations should go far back. Yes, I concur.
Wherever the truth leads, however far back into the past it may reach, then so be it. You, the people, need to know.
Yes, the people still need to know about La Valley.
Apparently, he wants me to explain to the nation why I, as a minister, signed an agreement. Well, it seems as though he wants me to explain why I signed. I'm told that he said he's not accusing anybody of bubble, but that he was just asking, where's the money? That's what I'm told, right? And I don't remember. But let me say what I have to say. I'm not saying it didn't happen.
The long green fence have disappeared. There's no golf course. So should we take the Aegis roommate answer, or should we start to investigate La Valley and the misuse of the powers of his roommate's office? Or rather, could we conclude that he was lying when he said he don't remember, as an attempt to cover up a scandal or corrupt practices? Until the Aegis new roommate breaks his silence on that $50 million contract that he signed, the country will conclude that he has no moral compass to guide us in areas of good governance. And I won't even talk about the court and what the judge said about the Aegis roommate and about his undue duress. I won't speak about that tonight. But Garth Lucian Wilkins' new roommate, like the old proverb says, he lives in a glass house, so he cannot throw stones. And that is my point tonight, which is about the hypocrisy of Garth Lucian Wilkin and his new roommate who are living in a glass house but yet throwing stones. My straight dog family. It bears reminding you, as I wind up tonight, I state without fear of contradiction, I remind you that our Attorney General Garth Lucian Wilkin broke the law, and that is a serious matter. And I say this without malice, because the AG held a Bible in his hand and swore before God, the entire nation of St. Kitts and Nevis and the world, to uphold the Constitution and the law. But he failed all of us. He failed us badly, my straight dog family. What a message, or what message does he send to the 10 or 15 young lawyers in St. Kitts and Nevis who were just called to the bar, or rather whom the AG called to the bar? Because the Attorney General is the leader of the bar. How can he lead the bar when a High Court judge cited him for this, or cited his horrible conduct? The minimum is plain dishonesty. What more grounds you want for dismissal? What more grounds you want? Disappointing, though, is the Prime Minister, who is also the Minister of Social Security. And he was there. He must have read the decision, though, which the High Court judge says that the non-payments or the late payments, the decision of the court handed down, rather said his actions, the actions of Wilkin, Garth Lucian Wilkin, constituted a criminal offense, whether or not the law is strictly enforced. That's what it says in the decision. And you know what's a criminal offense, my straight dog family. But the standard set for the AG, the standard set for Garth Lucian Wilkin cannot be the same. Cannot. He tried to suppress my right to speak and the people's right to know. But he never thought about the fact that he who comes to equity must come with clean hands. Those who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. There's a roommate in Garth Wilkins' house, glass house, but they must stop throwing stones. And I would want to leave you tonight, my straight dog family, with the recommendation from the actuary, Derek Osborne, who had this to say.
Probably more importantly, I think, is the fact that we need to find a way to ensure that people who are supposed to pay only get a business license renewed, or only get to drive taxi, or get to be a doctor or a lawyer in the private sector if they're compliant with Social Security, right? Checks and balances in place. If you don't pay on the right hand, you can't practice on the left hand, right? It happens in the US, it happens in Canada, it happens all over the international, all over the big countries. We need to find a way in the Caribbean to let the system speak to one another, and let's make sure that everybody's compliant to make the system better.
Don't pay on the left hand or the right hand, you can't get your license on the other hand. There's a new roommate in Garth's glass house. They must stop throwing stones. That's my story tonight, my straight dog family, and I'm not going to change it. I'm going to thank Almighty God for guiding our conversation tonight, and as always, I want to thank you who called, the many of you who listen, those who sent emails. Remember, all of you on our social media, all of you who participated in whatever form, you are the ones who make Straight Talk. And that's, without you, there's no Straight Talk. I want to thank you. And I want to remind you that whatever your mind conceive, that you will achieve. But first of all, you got to believe. So when you wake in the morning, thank God for the morning light. Thank Him for taking you through the night. And my Straight Talk family, keep moving on. Have yourselves a wonderful weekend. Do your chores. Go to church. Praise the Lord. Do whatever you have to do. But just be good to all whom you meet. Bye-bye. My Straight Talk family. Until we connect on Monday. Keep moving on.
I won't stop now. I'll keep moving on till I reach the top somehow. Now I'm on my way with strength and courage from above. No man I'll fear, since God protects me with His love. Strong, pure and true, and so sincere. Company like always stay to the Lord in prayer.